At least 5 people have been killed as heavy thunderstorms ripped through the Balkans region after days of soaring heat.
New Zealand is rocked by a deadly shooting in Auckland just hours before the city hosts the opening game of the FIFA Women's World Cup.
Serbia's capital Belgrade was among several cities in the Balkans to be hit by powerful storms following days of soaring temperatures. Wind gusts brought down power lines, leaving areas without electricity, and the airport was temporarily closed. In Croatia, the storm suddenly darkened the sky and brought blinding rain, flash floods and winds across Zagreb from 4 p.m, halting the city's transportation, causing power outages and leaving streets blocked. Zagreb's emergency services have asked citizens to be patient as hundreds of calls for help came at once. 2 men died when a tree fell on them. In Slovenia, authorities say tens of thousands of people were left without power and scores of campers have been evacuated from their campsites as strong winds overturned their tents. Across the region, storms have left chaos behind and injured dozens, from rooftops being ripped off to falling trees.
A gunman killed 2 people and injured 6 others in a shooting on a construction site in New Zealand's largest city, Auckland. The authorities have confirmed the gunman also died at the scene. A police officer was among the injured but was able to walk to an ambulance with help from colleagues. No motive has been given, but the attack is not thought to have been terror-related.
The offender was armed with a pump-action shotgun. He moved through the building site, discharging the firearm as he went. Upon reaching the upper levels of the building, the man contained himself in an elevator. Shots were fired and he was located a short time later.
The attack comes as Auckland prepares to host the opening game of the Women's World Cup later on Thursday. The construction site was close to the hotel where the Norwegian women's national team has been staying. New Zealand's Prime Minister says there is no national security threat and the tournament will proceed as planned. Protesters in Iraq, angered by the planned burning of a copy of the Quran, have stormed the Swedish embassy in Baghdad, breaking into the compound and causing a fire. Online videos show demonstrators waving flags and signs after protests were called by supporters of a prominent cleric. This footage showed dozens of the men climbing over the fence at the site and a small fire breaking out. Police and other security officials were called to the scene as dawn broke and smoke continued to rise. Sweden's foreign ministry said in a statement that their embassy staff was safe and condemned the attack as a serious violation of the Vienna Convention. Swedish police on Wednesday granted a permit for a protest outside the Iraqi embassy in Stockholm, with media reporting the organisers planned to burn the Muslim holy book. It comes just weeks after a lone man set fire to pages of the Quran outside Stockholm's main mosque. It was supposed to be the crowning achievement of his term, the rotating presidency of the European Council held by a socialist Spanish Prime Minister. Both Spain and the EU had high expectations, but Conservative gains at local elections in May led Pedro Sánchez to call for early elections.
Desde el punto de vista de las instituciones europeas, la convocatoria electoral del 23 de julio sentó como un jarro de agua fría.
Brussels will be keeping a close eye on the elections this Sunday, contested by Pedro Sanchez's Socialist Party and Alberto Núñez Feijóo's Popular Party. So what could a potential coalition with the far-right Vox Party mean for Spain's political posture?
Eso podría, de alguna forma, generar cierta alarma en algunos de los equilibrios que hay ahora mismo en Bruselas. Dicho esto, es cierto que los dos grandes partidos, el Partido Popular y el Partido Socialista, han dejado fuera de la campaña electoral todo aquello que tiene que ver con Bruselas y con la Unión Europea. Es decir, podemos decir que a grandes rasgos están de acuerdo, hay sintonía.
On the table are important European agreements such as migration policy and the ecological transition.
discurso con evocaciones negacionistas que está muy bien para intentar hacer un ejercicio de populismo electoral, pero que desde el punto de vista de la policy y no de la politics son inaplicables. En otras materias, como puede ser el debate sobre la migración, yo creo que el Partido Popular haría mal si intenta hacer concesiones en materias que son muy sensibles.
Sin mayorías absolutas a la vista, las últimas encuestas apuntan a que la presidencia del Gobierno de España se decidirá por un puñado de escaños el próximo domingo 23 de julio. Será una noche de infarto también en Bruselas. En Madrid, Jaime Velázquez, Euronews.
The Irish Prime Minister visited Kyiv to show his moral support for Ukraine. Leo Varadkar, whose country is not involved in financing the acquisition of arms for Ukraine, has pledged €5 million in humanitarian aid. He's also said that he'll investigate how Irish-made components ended up in Iranian suicide drones used by Russia. Meanwhile, images of Ukrainian grain warehouses in flames after being attacked by Russia have sparked panic in the markets. According to Ukraine, at least 60,000 tons of wheat were destroyed in the overnight attacks in the Odessa region. The price of wheat rose more than 8% in the aftermath of the fires. Russia's President Vladimir Putin this week pulled out of a deal to allow grain to be exported through Black Sea ports, and insists it does not make sense to renew the agreement when the West refuses to lift sanctions imposed on Russian agricultural exports. The South African government has confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin will not travel to the country next month to attend a BRICS summit. Putin is subject to an arrest warrant by the International Criminal Court, to which South Africa is a signatory. That means that they would be responsible for detaining him should he enter the country. But Moscow has made it clear that any such move would be tantamount to a declaration of war against Russia. BRICS is an acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, and the group is held by some as an alternative to the G7. A spokesman for the South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa, said that the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will represent Putin at the summit. The Kremlin has denied issuing any warning to Cape Town, but insists that everyone knows what the arrest of the Russian president would mean. Putin is wanted by the ICC in connection with the kidnapping of Ukrainian children.
Fiona Scott Morton, chosen as the chief economist for competition at the European Commission, has withdrawn following a storm of objections mainly led by France. The EU Commissioner for Competition, Margrethe Vestager, said on Twitter she will accept her decision with regret and full respect for her integrity. Scott Morton, being non-European as well as her past work as a consultant for the big tech companies such as Apple and Microsoft that the EU Commission has under its radar, were the main sources of criticism. And many MEPs were not convinced by Vestager's answers.
Face à ce recrutement problématique, embarrassant, il était préférable de renoncer. Je crois que c'est une sage décision. Simplement, on avait des questions autour de son recrutement parce que c'est inédit de recruter à la Commission européenne un chief économiste qui ne soit pas européen. Avec ceci, avec cette nationalité américaine, des questions se posaient notamment en matière d'accès aux informations confidentielles et de conflit d'intérêts.
For many, it was Macron himself killing the nomination, as he openly suggested that it would be better to get a great European for the job in the context of his constant philosophy for EU strategic autonomy. For others, this is sending the wrong message to the world's top experts for an introvert approach from Europe's side, despite the fact that they all agree there were legitimate questions raised.
I think her US citizenship played a very important role, and I think it's a stupid argument to take this as the main argument to oppose. I think the EU should attract more experts from different parts of the world, and the message we are sending now is that if you're a US citizen or maybe coming from an Asian country, then you're not welcome.
A few days ago, the major political groups at the European Parliament sent a letter to Vestager expressing dismay over the appointment of Fiona Scott Morton as chief competition economist, while a group of commissioners also raised concerns.
UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has apologised in Parliament for the historical treatment of LGBT veterans who were sacked or forced out of the military for being gay. This comes after a report recommending a public apology and compensation for the victims. Until as recently as the year 2000, it was illegal to be gay in the British military, even though homosexuality was decriminalised in the UK in 1967. The report said before the ban was lifted, there had been shocking accounts of homophobia, bullying, blackmail and sexual assaults. Kenyan police fired tear gas at protesters as 3 days of planned anti-government demonstrations erupt on the streets of Nairobi against the rising cost of living. Schools and businesses have been closed with people afraid of getting caught up in the violence. Last week, at least 14 people died during demonstrations. 10 were shot dead by police. It is the third time this month that opposition leader Raila Odinga has staged mass rallies against a government he says is illegitimate. In a rare sign of public opposition to Taliban orders, dozens of Afghan women have held a protest against a nationwide beauty salon ban. Beauticians and makeup artists along with their clients gathered in the capital Kabul. The women defied security forces who used fire hoses and tasers to break up the protest. The Taliban move has drawn international concern about the impact on female entrepreneurs. They say the salons are forbidden by Islam.